Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
Have you ever avoided asking for what you want? Because you were terrified of hearing the word no? What if I told you that the very thing you fear, rejection, might be the key to your confidence, your courage, and your freedom? Let me share something personal. A few years ago, I was terrified of rejection. Even the smallest no, a declined coffee invitation, a missed deadline, or a simple critique, felt like a punch to my heart. I'd replay it over and over, questioning my worth, my ability, even my identity. One day, a friend introduced me to something called rejection therapy. It was simple but radical. Deliberately seek out small rejections. Ask strangers for things you think they'll say no to. At first, I laughed at the idea. Me, asking for things just to be rejected. Impossible. But the first time I asked a barista if I could have a free latte and she said no, something surprising happened. My heart didn't shatter. My ego didn't crumble. I felt nothing. And for the first time, I realized rejection isn't an attack. It's just information. It doesn't define me. Here's what I learned: every no is a tiny rehearsal for resilience. Every time we face rejection, we practice courage. We confront our vulnerability. And the truth is, vulnerability is not weakness. It's the birthplace of confidence, connection, and growth. Most of us avoid rejection because we equate it with failure, or worse, with being unworthy. But in reality, rejection is a mirror. It shows us where we're hiding, where we're afraid to stretch, and where we're holding back from our fullest life. When we embrace rejection, something magical happens. We begin to disentangle our self-worth from external approval. We stop asking, will they say yes? And start asking, am I brave enough to try? And that shift, it transforms everything. Relationships deepen, opportunities expand. And slowly you start living as the confident, authentic version of yourself you've been longing to be. Have you ever noticed how much power we give to a single word? No. Just the thought of hearing it can stop us in our tracks. We avoid asking for things, expressing ourselves, or pursuing opportunities because we're afraid of that one word. I remember a time when I wouldn't even make a simple request at work or in my personal life without rehearsing every possible outcome in my head. My mind would run endless scenarios. What if they say no? What if they think I'm not good enough? What if I'm rejected? And in that fear, I slowly began to shrink myself, to live smaller than I wanted to hide my dreams and desires from the world. Then I discovered the concept of rejection therapy. At first, it seemed absurd. Purposefully seeking out rejection. Asking for things I didn't really need, things I knew would likely be denied. My inner critic laughed at the idea. But there was a curiosity there too, a tiny spark wondering, what if this is exactly what I need? The first time I tried it, I asked a stranger if I could borrow their pen. Not for any reason, just to see what would happen. And when they said no, I was stunned. Because nothing terrible happened. My heart didn't break. My self-worth didn't vanish. I realized in that moment that I had been carrying this enormous, invisible weight. The weight of assuming that every rejection was a personal failure. And yet, the truth was far simpler. Rejection is not a reflection of your value. It's simply a moment of information, a chance to practice resilience. From that day on, I began experimenting more boldly. I asked my barista for an extra pastry, a friend for an unexpected favor, even a colleague for a project I wanted to lead. Each no felt a little less sharp, a little less personal, and each time I survived, I noticed something extraordinary. The more I faced rejection, the more my confidence grew. The fear that had held me back for years began to loosen its grip. I started to understand that courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about feeling that fear, stepping into it, and choosing to act anyway. And each no became a tiny rehearsal for that courage, a stepping stone toward living with authenticity and boldness. As I continued practicing rejection therapy, something even deeper started to emerge, something beyond just surviving a no. I began to notice how much of my life had been shaped by the need for approval, by the unspoken fear of being judged or dismissed. Every time I hesitated to ask for what I wanted, every time I held back from expressing my truth, I was allowing the world to define my worth. And the more I avoided rejection, the smaller and more confined my life became. But here's the beautiful paradox. When I deliberately sought rejection, I discovered a freedom I had never known. I realized that vulnerability, the willingness to risk discomfort, embarrassment, or even failure, is not a weakness. It is the birthplace of courage, connection, and growth. The more I expose myself to small, intentional no's, the more I learned to separate my self-worth from external validation. I could hear a rejection and still say to myself, I am enough. I am worthy. I am capable. And it wasn't just about me. Facing rejection openly created deeper connections with the people around me. When I asked boldly, honestly, and without attachment to the outcome, people saw my courage. They saw authenticity. They saw someone who wasn't afraid to risk, to be human, to be vulnerable. And something remarkable happened. They responded with empathy, respect, and even generosity more often than I could have predicted. I began to see that rejection is not the opposite of belonging. It is part of the path to it. Each no teaches us how to show up fully, how to set boundaries, and how to communicate our desires clearly without fear. It teaches us to embrace uncertainty, to trust ourselves, and to step into spaces we might otherwise avoid. Every rejection becomes a small act of defiance against the inner critic that tells us we're not enough. And with each act of courage, confidence grows, not as a loud proclamation, but as a quiet, steady knowing that no matter what happens, we can handle it. As I continued on this journey, I started noticing a shift in how I related to myself. Rejection therapy wasn't just about building confidence in front of others. It was about cultivating an inner resilience, a deep trust in my own worth that no external no could shake. Before, I had measured my value by the responses of others. If someone said yes, I felt validated. If they said no, I felt diminished. But each intentional rejection began to chip away at that false measure of worth. I realized my value isn't negotiable. It isn't something that can be given or taken away by anyone else. What struck me most was how liberating this was. When I stopped fearing rejection, I stopped fearing life. I asked for things I wanted, pursued opportunities I dreamed of, and spoke up for what mattered to me. And yes, there were plenty of no's, but they no longer felt like punishments. Instead, they became lessons. Each no revealed something, perhaps a boundary I wasn't aware of, or a truth about what I truly needed, or even a chance to pivot and approach life differently. Rejection became a mirror, reflecting clarity, growth, and self-awareness. And here's the most profound insight: vulnerability is the currency of courage. Every time we expose ourselves to the possibility of rejection, we step into vulnerability. We risk embarrassment, discomfort, even failure, but we also open the door to authenticity, connection, and transformation. By facing no head on, we build a muscle that no compliment or approval ever could. A muscle that whispers in our quietest moments, I am enough. I am resilient. I am fearless in the face of life's uncertainty. Through this practice, I began to notice a subtle yet powerful confidence growing, not the loud, boastful kind, but a quiet, grounded courage. It's the kind of confidence that doesn't depend on winning, on pleasing, or on avoiding rejection. It's the confidence that arises when you know that whatever life throws at you, whatever no you receive, you can handle it, and in fact, you will grow stronger for it. By the time I reached the fourth stage of this journey, I realized that embracing rejection wasn't just a tool for personal growth. It was a profound act of self-love. Each intentional no I faced taught me something invaluable: that my worth is inherent, that my dreams are valid, and that my voice deserves to be heard, even if others don't always agree. Life will always hand us moments of rejection, big and small, but our response to them is what defines our resilience and our courage. I began to notice how much time and energy we waste trying to avoid discomfort. We stay silent when we want to speak, shrink when we want to shine, and hesitate when we want to move forward, simply to dodge the possibility of a no. But when I leaned into rejection, I discovered the exact opposite of what fear promised. Rejection did not diminish me. It revealed me. It revealed my courage, my authenticity, and my capacity to show up fully in life. And the beauty of it is this: rejection is a teacher, not a verdict. Each no teaches us clarity, empathy, and honesty. It shows us where we need to grow, where we need to practice self-compassion, and where we need to trust the process of life. Over time, this practice transforms the way we engage with the world. We start taking bold steps, asking for what we want, setting boundaries, and embracing opportunities without attachment to the outcome. We begin to live with intention, courage, and a quiet, unwavering confidence. What's even more powerful is that this isn't just about professional success or external achievements. It's about our relationships, our sense of purpose, and our emotional freedom. When we embrace rejection, we become more present, more connected, and more alive. We stop fearing judgment, comparison, and failure, and start showing up fully for ourselves and the people we care about. Rejection no longer feels like a threat. It becomes a stepping stone, a guide, and a mirror reflecting our truest, most resilient selves. And so, we step into life differently. We carry ourselves with a quiet courage, a deep sense of worth, and a willingness to be vulnerable, even when it feels uncomfortable. We understand that every now is a gift, every rejection a rehearsal for bravery, and every moment of vulnerability and opportunity to build the life we were always meant to live. So here's my challenge to you this week. Seek out one small rejection. Ask for something you think you'll be told no to. And when it happens, breathe, smile, and notice how nothing catastrophic occurs. Comment below what your no experience was. Share your story. Let's normalize rejection, let's celebrate courage, and let's remind each other that every no is one step closer to living boldly. Remember, confidence isn't built in comfort zones, it's built in the messy, awkward, vulnerable spaces where we dare to face no and choose ourselves anyway. A fade out with soft, uplifting music and on-screen text. Or embrace rejection. Build your courage. Transform your life.